Jij sind willkommen. Today we melef Geōl. Hit is Mitchell day bēoþ. We have done bloten on nu je wistiaf way. We bidden for winchler effen niet. Thonna we bidden for tham nu an monan. Und nu monach fillen hit is. Und nu melef we Geōl. Hit je lastaf verfria nitum. Kom mina wina chimbus. We have a drink on we have a malmetta. Drag that elu bench. Je schulen sitten bethan thela. Bēoþ willkommen to Ulum midwinter sumbul. Welcome to the Meadhall and to this celebration of the heathen festival of Yule or Geōl, a time to celebrate the return of the sun, a time for gathering together with our tribe members, a time for feasting and drinking, a time for making oaths and boasts, and of course a time to make a sacrifice to ask for a good harvest. Now, many of you will know Yule is a neo-pagan celebration which is held on the winter solstice, usually on the 21st of December. But our ancient Germanic and Scandinavian ancestors, well, they didn't celebrate it on the winter solstice. It was actually celebrated at a point after the winter solstice, which was marked by the full moon. Now, the midwinter moon in January 2023 falls this year on the 6th of January. But the point that I want to make in this video is that unlike Christmas, Yule, Geōl, is not a fixed point on a calendar. It varies from year to year based on the cycles of the moon and of the sun. It is in fact dictated by the lunisolar calendar. Now, to support what I have just said, we're going to look at some evidence, and we're going to start first with the Romans. Now, let's look at Tacitus. Tacitus, who wrote in AD 98 about the Germanic tribes, what he tells us is they assemble unless upon some sudden emergency on stated days, either at the new or full moon, which they account the most auspicious season for beginning any enterprise. Nor do they, in their computation of time, reckon like us by the number of days, but of nights. In this way they arrange their business. In this way they fix their appointments, so that with them the night seems to lead the day. Now, sticking with the Romans, during the 3rd century AD, the still very much pagan Romans celebrated the rebirth of Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun, who was originally a Syrian god adopted into the Roman pantheon. Now, in AD 274, under the Roman Emperor Aurelius, the cult of Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun, was established as an official religion, and the feast day was celebrated on the 25th of December. Now, the important point to make here is that under the Julian calendar, the solstice, the winter solstice, fell on the 25th of December. So, this feast of Sol Invictus was celebrated on the winter solstice. Also around this time, the Romans celebrated the feast of Saturnalia, which fell on the 17th of December, and was a time when people feasted and exchanged gifts. Now, when the Romans became Christianized, Rome formally recognized and started celebrating Christmas on December the 25th in AD 336 during the reign of the Emperor Constantine. Now, this happened in the western part of the Roman Empire, In the eastern part of the Roman Empire, it was celebrated later on the 6th of January. But we mustn't forget that to them the 25th of December was the winter solstice. So what happened was a previously pagan celebration was replaced, straight swap, for a new Christian celebration. Now let's jump northwards, shall we, and have a look at some evidence from Scandinavian. Now we know from the Ynglinga saga, written by Snorri Sturluson in part of his Heimskringla, that there were 3 main blots or sacrifices celebrated by the pagan Scandinavians at this time. Now if we look to chapter 8, Odin's law giving, we see what it says is, on winter day there should be a blood sacrifice for a good year, and in the middle of winter for a good crop. And the third sacrifice should be on summer day for victory in battle. Now this gives us very good evidence for 3 main blots or sacrifices that were observed. But the question we need to ask ourselves is, when were they actually celebrated? Now Procopius, a Greek scholar who became the principal Roman historian in the 6th century for the Roman emperor, he tells us that their midwinter festival was celebrated sometime after the winter solstice, a time when they would celebrate the return of the sun. And really it's not until we get into early January that you can actually start to notice that the sun is gaining in strength. Now let's have a little bit more Scandinavian evidence which does explain why this midwinter festival of Yule was moved to align with Christmas. Now King Hakon the Good, who was king of Norway, who ruled from 935 to 961, was the son of Harald Fairhair. He was a Christian, but he ruled a country where there were many heathens, powerful heathens, doing heathen things. So if we look at the saga of Hakon the Good, chapter 15, Hakon spreads Christianity. What it says is, King Hakon was a good Christian when he came to Norway, but as the whole country was heathen with much heathenish sacrifice, and as many great people, as well as the favour of the common people, were to be conciliated, he resolved to practice his Christianity in private, but he kept Sundays and the Friday fasts with some token of the greatest holy days. He made a law that the festival of Yule should begin at the same time as the Christian people held it, and that every man under penalty should brew a meal of malt into ale, and therewith keep the Yule holy as long as it lasted. Before him, the beginning of Yule, or the slaughter night, Hakanot, was the night of midwinter, and Yule was kept for 3 days thereafter. So just to remind you of what I said earlier about the festival of Sol Invictus being held on the winter solstice, which at that point was the 25th of December, and when they Christianised in 336, the date of Christmas was therefore placed on the 25th of December, which was under the Julian calendar. Now I'd like to look at some English sources. So we're going to turn to Bede, or Bede as he probably should be pronounced, and we're going to have a look at his work, The Reckoning of Time. So I'm going to read from you from chapter 15, which is entitled The English Monks. In olden time the English people, for it did not seem fitting for me that I should speak of other nations' observance of the year and yet be silent about my own nations, calculated their months according to the course of the moon. Hence, after the manner of the Greeks and the Romans, the months take their names from the moon, for the moon is called Mona, and the month Monaf. The first month, which the Latins call January, is Juli, February is called Solmanaf, March Hlef Monaf, April ēowre, May Hlymilchi, June Litha, July also Litha, August Weod Monaf, September Hale Monaf, October Winter Philef, November Blood Monaf, December Yule, the same name by which January is called. They began the year on the 8th calends of January, when we celebrate the birth of the Lord. That very night, which we hold so sacred, they used to call by the heathen word Modrlanecht, that is, Mother's Night, because we suspect of the ceremonies they enacted all that night. Now I'd just like to say that there is no other evidence anywhere for Mother's Night except from what Bede says in his reckoning of time. So whether Bede was correct or not, we don't know. This could have been a very, very localised celebration. I guess we'll never know, but that's a story for another day. Whenever it was a common year, they gave 3 lunar months to each season. When an embolismic year occurred, that is, one of 13 lunar months, they assigned the extra month to summer, so that 3 months together bore the name Litha. Hence they called the embolismic year 3 Lithi. It had 4 summer months, with the usual 3 for the other seasons, but originally they divided the year as a whole into 2 seasons, summer and winter, assigning the 6 months in which the days are longer than the nights to summer, and the other 6 to winter. Hence they called the month in which the winter season began Winter Philef, a name made up from winter and full moon, because winter began on the full moon of that month. Nor is it irrelevant if we take the trouble to translate the names of the other months. The months of Yule derive their name from the day when the sun turns back and begins to increase, because one of these months precedes this day and the other follows. So that's all I want to read from Bede or Bede for now. Let's look at some more evidence. Now, I'd like to introduce you to Swedish scholar Andreas Nordberg from the University of Stockholm, who has written a very interesting paper entitled Yule Disting och folklig tilldragning. My Swedish is very bad. It is in Swedish. In English it translates into something like Christmas disting and pre-church timing. Now in his work, Andreas explains that these ancient people followed a lunisolar calendar, and that Yule would be worked out as being on the first full moon following the new moon after the winter solstice. Now I'd just like to say this work is in Swedish, so unless you speak Swedish, you may end up, as I did, spending many happy hours on Google Translate. So if we go back now to what we know from Snorri's Ynglinga saga about the 3 main blots and what we've gathered from Bede or Bede, we can assume that the start of winter, Winter's Day, or as the Anglo Saxons called it, Winter Philef, was on the full moon around the time of October. 3 full moons later, we have midwinter, Geōl, Yule, and then 3 full moons after that, we have summer day. So the day on which Yule is celebrated from year to year will change. It is not a fixed day on the calendar. Now I was actually really pleased when I looked at the calendar for the year that I was born, and I saw that I was actually born within the 3-night celebration of the festival of Yule. Now, I was actually also born in a very ferocious thunderstorm, so I do think I had the blessings of þoncie. So anyway, back to 2023. This year it falls on the 6th of January. That means that Summer Day will be on the 6th of April, and Winter Philip, the start of next winter, will be on the 28th of October. But we don't want to think about that. We've got to get through this winter first. So I think it's fair to say that our ancestors, they looked to the moon, and I've been out for a walk this evening with my hound, and the moon was almost full, and I could feel the power of the moon. It has a very powerful energy if you just tune into it and feel it. And I think that our ancestors did exactly that. So I hope you have enjoyed joining me in the Meadhall for this Yule celebration. I suggest that you grab some ale, pull up that ale bench or drag that ēowre bench, and raise a toast to the ancestors, to the spirits, to the gods, and make a sacrifice for a good crop, whatever that means to you. So thank you so much for joining me. Thank you, Thay. If you like this video, please give it a like. If you haven't already subscribed, please do so. Thank you so much to my existing subscribers, and of course to my lovely patrons. I really do appreciate your support. I hope you'll join me for more Anglo Saxon goodness in other videos. So all I have to say now is bēoþ well and enjoy the Yule festivities. Hale.